some seeds today. Hello, fellow plant people. Welcome back if you're returning to my channel. And if you are new, my name is Jen. I go by The Leafy Geek here and also on Instagram. And I thought I would share with you some pretty neat little packages I got in the mail today. This is probably going to be a several or multi-part video because I do have a few more seeds on order. Yes, I ordered a bunch of seeds online. I am doing kind of a grand experiment. So I am trying to plant my garden this coming season entirely from seed. And I have several reasons for doing that. I've highlighted that a little bit in a few previous videos, kind of mentioned in passing, but I thought maybe I should explain that a little more thoroughly in like a full video devoted to seed starting and seeds, because I do want to show you what I have gotten today specifically, but also kind of want to talk to you about why I'm doing it this way this year. My previous gardens in previous years have been kind of a hodgepodge or a mix of plants I've direct sown, plants I've started indoors and grown from seed, and then actual seedlings that I have purchased from nurseries and various farmers markets around where I live. So there's kind of a reason for me trying it this way this year, and I'd like to share that with you. So I live in a part of Minnesota that is fairly, or historically has been considered fairly rural. It's a farming community, I would say, still, especially surrounding us. My town itself is probably, I think our population is up to 11,000 people now. We are just outside of kind of the Minneapolis metro area limits. Past like the outer suburban rings of the Twin Cities, you'll hit little pockets of towns and townships, but there's a lot of farmland surrounding each little pocket. Once you cross a certain point, or once you get out where I am, you're kind of at the threshold of farm country. We've had markets, and we've had a garden center that has pretty much always been here since before I can remember, since my grandparents lived here, I don't know, 30 plus years ago. They've just always been here. And they partner with a lot of neighboring farms and farming communities to put together a big start of the season opportunity for people to purchase plants for their gardens. And a lot of these plants obviously have been started already. They're decent size. They're well on their way to, to gaining maturity. Some of them are fruiting even, some of the vegetables. But it's always been just very convenient, and I feel like I support local farms and farm families around me when I purchase from them. And it's always just felt, like the thing to do. But they closed. I've kind of been at a loss this year, or at least at the end of last season, when I've been trying to figure out where I'm going to end up acquiring a lot of my stuff for my garden. And then in doing research, I did do seed starting last year. I had a whole series where I ended up doing some germination tests on some of my older seeds that I've had and stored from previous years of direct sowing, and just kind of wanted to try to see what would happen with some of those older seeds. And I had success. I was able to germinate some plants that I ended up planting in my garden and yielded fruit and produced some food, and I was able to kind of sustain my vegetable garden that way, which was great. I'm doing it on a larger scale this year. I opted to go that route. I opted to try, stepping out of my comfort zone and actually trying to learn a little bit more about that initial process of, successfully germinating seeds, providing them with the right conditions indoors to prepare them for transplant. Because I'm going to be starting a lot of these probably 2 months before I'm even going to consider moving them outdoors. There are a ton of resources on this site about doing this, and I just want to quickly give a general shout out to those folks for providing that information and that wonderful content. I've learned a lot from you. Garden Answer, a big one. Epic Gardening, another one. Pam's Pretty Plants, I've learned a lot from her because she does this on the regular and she's really, really good at it. And she's got this wonderful series where she, built a garden from scratch in her yard last year. So highly recommend checking that out. I'm going to link this stuff below because I have learned and drawn so much inspiration from that content that I want to make sure it's out there and that people are seeing it, especially if you're interested in trying gardening for the first time. It can be a little bit daunting, of course, thinking about doing this on this, level, but you can start small. You can do these things on a smaller scale and still find it really worthwhile and actually produce food for yourself. So, and of course, the pretty flowers. So I just want to make that clear that you do not have to be a professional to do this. You do not, the research helps up front, kind of preparing and taking the right steps to set yourself up for success. But it can be a fun experiment too. So I just want to put that out there. If you're interested in starting a garden, you haven't, give it a go. There's plenty of people on this site that will be able to provide you that inspiration and that coaching and guidance. So do it. So a couple more things before I start showing you stuff. So what I'm planning on doing is doing my vegetable garden, and something new this year, I'm doing a flower garden from seed. The flower garden is in my fenced-in backyard, which is also the domain of my hound dog. She has a fence. She roams that yard. It's kind of her space, but it's kind of ugly. So I am taking back a corner of it. It's in line in eyesight of my patio. So I wanted something pretty in that corner. But at the same time, I want it to be safe for her. I don't want to put plants in there that if she got into them would potentially harm her. So finding the balance between pet safe and beautiful, it's really not hard. There are plenty of flowers and flowering plants and even vegetables that you can put in a garden and have it be accessible to an animal, cat or dog. But you do want to make sure you do that research. So, of course, the ASPCA list of toxic and non-toxic plants is a really good place to start. I'll link that below too. But that's something that I'm doing this year as well, and that's new for me too, doing flowers. It's not something I've ever really focused on. I always focus on the food aspect of gardening outdoors. But I'm excited to try. Something that I'm kind of working on this week and in the next couple of weeks is getting my starting station set up and prepped. I've got my grow lights out. I'm rethinking what type of shelves I'm using. I'm not really a fan of the small shelf, and my seed starting trays that I've gotten don't really fit them. So I'm kind of rethinking that whole thing. Might move some stuff around and just get an ideal setup going however I can. So that's kind of what I'm working on, and I'm also working on drawing out and planning and plotting what the garden I think would work best, what it would look like and work best as, just based on what I have and what the space I'm going to have is. I might consider growing some of these vegetable seeds that I've picked up in containers. So outside of my larger garden plot, some of them I might grow in my flower garden, in my flower bed, just as kind of a contrasting foliage statement. Some of the greens, like the kale, could look really interesting and ornamental and add some texture to that flower bed, but also be able to harvest it easily. So these are all thoughts that I'm having. I'm using my Grow-A-Dam journal from Thrasher that I picked up recently, which is an amazing tool. Definitely recommend you check that out. And then, yeah, I've got my seed catalog or my seed library kind of organized, and I've got all my notes, and I'm just kind of reviewing the information and figuring out when my start times are going to be for seed starting, based on when my last frost is, or my average last frost is up here. In Minnesota, that can be kind of tricky to calculate because there's such a weird wide spectrum from year to year of when that date actually lands. So it's really got to be an average. And it's usually up here, it ends up being like the weekend after Mother's Day weekend is kind of what we shoot for, just to be safe. But there are some varieties that I'll be able to get out there a little bit earlier. They recommend planting earlier as cool weather crops in the spring. So it's fun. I'm getting organized. I'll definitely take you along for that ride. I'll give you updates. I might not do a full series, but I will do updates periodically just to kind of show you what I'm doing and how this is all working out. So with that said, I'm going to show you some seeds.